decided as a country to send a Polish personnel after almost a half a century. It's really symbolic. It provides a symbol that space is not only reserved for the biggest countries in the world, that we want to be a partner of this team exploring space.
Hey, Space Watchers, we are here joined by Colonel Marcin Mazur of the Polish space agency POLSA. And with Poland emerging as a significant player in both the civil and military dimensions of space, this conversation will dive into the country's national space strategy, its growing European and transatlantic engagement, and what's next for Polish space ambition. So, Marcin, how are you doing today?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm really good. And thank you for inviting me for the interview.
How would you define POLSA's strategic mission today, especially as Poland navigates growing space ambitions?
I would say it's fully in line with the Polish national space strategy, of course, which underlines a few strategic goals to achieve in the nearest future. The one which I think is the most important is to help the industry to grow as one of main goals of national agency. It means that to involve entities into different projects, national ones and international, to make the industry, the space sector more competitive in the EU, of course. The second one, which I would like to underline as well, is development of national space capabilities. And what is, of course, in consequence of having the capabilities, the European one or the national one, is to involve administration to use the data and products to make life easier and faster, to provide answer for the needs. And the third I would like to mention as well, which is extremely important, is the investment in people. Education from even high school level is really connected with the first priority to help the industry grow, to make the space sector bigger and more competitive. Definitely investments in manpower for future.
Okay. And how does POLSA coordinate with the Polish Armed Forces and the Ministry of Defense to ensure civilian and military priorities that they are aligned? You are an active military personnel, so you're bridging the agency with the armed forces, I guess.
That's right. I would start with this question that MOD is the biggest customer, of course, and the most aware customer of the requirements for the capabilities. And the MOD has own budget for different requirements which they need to run operations. As you mentioned, me as an active military is to help to systemize the efforts, to help each other, to coordinate some project capability development or to grow the competencies of people. I see some areas like space situational awareness. POLSA is a member of the EU-SST partnership, which makes the agency a great value for MOD to share competencies and share data to help MOD to grow, of course. There's one more thing which is not mentioned frequently, is that POLSA has also advisory council or supervisory council in which there is a member of MOD. One-star General Gorka is the member of the council, which help to share the needs and requirements with the agency and to help to coordinate the efforts from the MOD perspective as well. I think they need to connect the plans, the roadmaps, but also to get to a lower level when we talk about competencies and manpower and support each other in different levels.
I see. And we had the pleasure of having General Gurkar in our Space Café radio from the Prague Space Security Conference, where he gave us a really good overview about the Polish military space side here and the capability needs that you just mentioned. It's a great opportunity now to look more on the civilian side, and maybe you can allude a bit more on what are the core pillars of Poland's current civil space program.
I would share them into two pillars. So one is connected to exploration and the other one is to capabilities. The exploration, of course, is connected to exploration missions, to R&D, to technology development. Of course, to main missions, right? Like the one which is conducted right now.
Yeah.
And the second pillar is to national capabilities and Earth observation, the civilian Earth observation constellation which we are building. The EU-SST or competencies connected to our membership or satcom capabilities, which we also look forward to having for our own use at national level. They are, of course, connected to different efforts, internal ones, and in cooperation with different organizations like European Space Agency and national agencies, of course. But all in all, they go to the same directions to fulfill our requirements in those two pillars.
So maybe you can allude us, our audience that is not so familiar with what's going on in Poland in terms of space, about the satellite programs, the space infrastructure, or the international collaboration that are going on in Poland today. And when you talk about EUSST, I assume that you also have your own sensors, or that you have sensors in Poland for that?
That's true. I would say that since we are just after the Polish presidency in the EU, which the priority was security, the space capabilities play a huge role from our perspective. We don't have so far national Earth observation or SATCOM capabilities right now. However, we are really active in EUSST partnership. Since we provide data from 17 sensors, electro-optical, which are located at all continents. 6 of those sensors belong to the agency. The rest are public or private sensors. But all in all, we provide the data from different sensors to the EUSST. And our ambition is to play a much bigger role in the partnership in future.
Let me rewrap that. So Poland owns 17 ground-based sensors to watch the space on 6 continents, and a number of them belong to the agency and the rest are private. But these are Polish-owned sensors. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's connected with the role of the agency to involve the entities to run their own business, of course, but to help them to be involved in projects which they can get benefits as well. The 11 sensors belong to other entities, but we procure the data from them and involve the data for products which are provided by the partnership.
I see. Can you shed a bit of light on the satellite programs? I mean, you spoke about the SATCOM programs, the Earth observation programs that are ongoing. Yeah.
So I would say in April this year at the security conference, there was a contract signed already with the vendor of the future civilian Earth observation constellation, which is called CAMILA, which will be provided by 2027. It will include 4 satellites, 3 electro-optical and 1 SAR for public administration. The main role of the constellation is to provide the capability for civilian entities. However, as a part of our cooperation with the MOD, we want to see it as a backup or another source of data for military customer. I don't want to share too many information on MOD side, but they also have own contract signed recently. The biggest one, which was December 2022, I think, with Airbus Defence and Space for 2 Pléiades Neo and 2 internal contracts, one for electro-optical constellation, the other one for SAR constellation of microsatellites that they will be on MOD side. But when we look into other capabilities, we are looking forward to have our own national SATCOM capability. That is one of our priorities as well, to find a solution for safe and secure governmental capabilities. And we are looking options for how to fulfill the requirement.
We could recently report about the signature of the ICEYE for 3 satellites that were signed by Poland. Was it with POLSA or with the MOD?
That was MOD. That was the contract for ICEYE. The constellation is called MicroSAR. That's from MOD side. And the second micro satellite project called MicroGlobe is also on MOD side. That includes only electro-optical satellites.
I see. And how is POLSA position Poland in terms of developing your own sovereign capabilities versus relying on EU frameworks? What I hear so far is you're putting a lot of efforts in the sovereignty of the acquisition of data on the various levels. But how do you interplay with the EU frameworks?
It has changed a lot with our membership to the European Space Agency, with a sign of our interest to spend resources on space exploration and space capabilities. Of course, Either you decide to procure everything or you want to develop own ones to achieve higher competency of your industry. Not everything you can do in 10 years, a short time period perspective. We are fully aware of what we are able to do in the industry, which projects are feasible for us as a country, in which projects we need more support. But we want to be partner in near future to provide capabilities both to NATO and European Union organizations to be a partner of not only a customer, but also provider of capabilities. That, of course, needs some time because of the constellations being under development. But we want to play the role of providers, at least for the data.
I see. Let's shift gears a bit. Poland in space. You alluded to the AX4 mission earlier, and it marks a really historic milestone with the Polish astronaut, and now I try to pronounce it correctly, Sławomir Wisniewski. Was close?
Yeah, it was really close. Yeah.
Okay. Being still in space as we do the recording, and I think he is expected to come back early next week. So what does this mission mean for Poland's space community, and what comes next? Because an astronaut is obviously something, it's a milestone, a big one.
That's true. It's definitely really symbolic. We decided as a country to send a Polish personnel after almost half a century. The previous astronaut, or in that time it was called cosmonaut, with our Russian friends in 1978. It is also half a century. It's really symbolic. It provides a symbol that space is not only reserved for the biggest countries in the world, that we want to be a partner of this team exploring space. Of course, it's important about the role of the mission. The experiments which are being conducted by Sławomir, 13 of them. We selected 13 of 60 experiments, which are designed by our scientific institutions, universities, or private companies. It's important for us to give a chance to be more competitive, to conduct the experiments in microgravity, which is extremely important from a scientific point of view. But if you're asking me about future, I can't share too much details in that. We will see. We are just ahead of ESA ministerial. We are considering different options for sharing our resources, our subscription to ESA. There's one of the options to spend some resources on human exploration missions, of course.
I'm quite sure that also in Poland, the financial resources are not infinite these days, and you have very strong priorities and urgent priorities to fulfill. Can you allude if there is a long-term vision for sustained Polish human spaceflight participation? You mentioned the ESA ministerial, and looking at the numbers that the Polish space program grew over the last years, that was significant, but a big chunk went obviously to the human space flight. Can you give us a bit of direction without saying too much, what we can expect from Poland?
Definitely, we are considering different options. Our main way for development and for investments is the European Space Agency. Nowadays, we see the ESA human exploration missions and investments in human missions as one of the options. But really, I can't share any more details right now.
Okay. Germany dreams about having German astronaut on the moon. So at least that's in our coalition contract. But let's see.
Well, dreams are important to switch them to goals.
Absolutely. We all know Kennedy's words are to put humans on the moon. As we met last week in Brussels at the EU Space Forum, there were big discussions about the draft of the EU space law that aims to harmonize licensing, safety and sustainability standards. So what is Poland's position on this initiative now after, I think, 2 weeks after it's out? I think it's very early still in the process, but what is the first instinct?
The Space Act, which was published recently, we just started analyzing from different perspectives, from the agency, from industry. We shared the document, of course, with them. It needs some efforts, definitely, from all sides. We are also at the period where we want to implement our national space law. And we do some dialogues with industry about national law. So we have really big discussion about the document. But all in all, I would say, when we look into any other areas, wherever you implement any regulations, standards, some which influence on the other parties, entities, private sector, in consequence, it gives some negative opinion because the regulations really require some additional work to fulfill the standards. And regardless of the document, there will be more comments than the document has. Usually the entities defend or postpone the implementation of that kind of documents. But anyway, we have to think globally. We have to think about strategic goal, what we want to achieve, the safety, resilience, sustainability, the priorities which are defined as the priorities of the Space Act are the goals to achieve, and we should try to find a solution.
Absolutely. And I think no one could disagree with the boilerplate or the poster that the EU Commission published about the EU Space Act, as you just mentioned. We are all for a more sustainable environment. We are more for safety in space because it can have really fatal consequences, but that all will come for a price. Yeah, and as previously discussed in Brussels, this price can then have consequences for the space industry in the various countries. Yeah, and the discussion about competitiveness versus open market versus single market, all the measures for fulfilling the previously said points, that can be big. But that's why we have this process kicked off. We have now something on the table, and I think that's a good thing. Now we can talk. Otherwise, it was just a crystal ball reading or dancing around the fire and saying, let's see. So now we have something to debate. And I think it's an ambitious plan to implement it by January 1st, 2030, but we will see.
That's right. We have almost 4 years, right? More than 4 years to analyze it, to provide some feedback on the idea and how we see the documents from different perspectives.
And let's face it, 4 years for Brussels terms, it's not a long time. It's rather fast. I think the run is on. Let's talk about the international engagement. So Poland is a very active member in ESA, as you mentioned before, the EU space program, so Copernicus, Galileo, now upcoming IRIS, and increasingly in bilateral initiatives. So how does POLSA balance its engagement across all these levels? Is there a focus that you put on?
As I mentioned, from our perspective, engagement in ESA project is the first priority. We share or we spend most our financial resources to ESA to help the industry to be involved. However, we see after those more than 12 years of our membership that to fulfill our requirements, we need to find projects which fill the gaps between those projects. And we need to connect the dots to fulfill our plans and our ideas for development. Of course, there are some initiatives we would love to be more involved, like in Horizon projects, which we see as an area for improvement. But still, it's all connected to stability of resources, to be sure that the resources which we spend will get to the point that we will be happy with the effects of the investments.
Okay, let's focus a bit on the future and the needs. So what are the key priorities if you drill them down for the next 3 to 5 years? I think you mentioned them all, but if you just put them together and maybe add also then onto that, so what do you need most from the politics, from the industry, from academia to make this vision a reality? Because one thing is a strategic document, where to go, and then getting the troops aligned to that, to speak in the military language.
That's right. If I'm able to highlight the priorities first, I would say implementation of the Earth observation constellation into life, the CAMILA project, to be implemented, to be used for the administration. That's the first priority. The second, I would say, the decision of the satcom capability. We understand that our industry doesn't have so much competencies in this area. So we are looking the option for different corporations and analyzing the ways to fulfill the requirements. And the third, I would choose from the exploration. Our ambition is to run our own lunar mission, lunar exploration. And so, of course, it could be conducted bilaterally with any agency. And we share that ideas with some agencies already. That's the third from the scientific point of view. Going to the second part of your question about our expectations, I would say from the academia, I would expect to provide us with more manpower, with more specialist engineers, but also different specialty required for the space sector to be involved. From the industry, I would say to employ those people. It needs to be connected like a circle. The academia provides people, the sector use the competencies, the young people, and it helps the industry, the entities to be involved in bigger number of projects. I would add to this set of parties also administration. When we talk about capabilities, I would love to have administration to have knowledge about the expectations and what the capabilities help them to improve their work. And of course, from politician is the only expectation is to have stability of resources, of goals, of people, but stability is the crucial point.
Do you know by the top of your head which Polish universities offer today space courses or aerospace? So where are they?
They are located in different towns. Some of them, they are connected to engineering, other ones to data exploitation. But the data exploitation is much easier than engineering. But definitely in Krakow, there's Academy of Mining, and I don't remember the official name of the academy. But also in Krakow, there's a separate department already set up in this year, in February or March, which will provide master degree studies for the space engineering with many international teachers involved, which is really positive. In Gdańsk, we have also studies connected to space engineering, Technical University of Gdańsk, military universities, the University of Technology and Air Force Academy, they also started with space. However, they are connected not always with engineering, but with capability exploitation and whatsoever. I think they provide different skills for the students and there's different outcome expected.
Great. Thank you very much for this interview. Marcin, thanks for sharing Poland's vision for space, and Poland's space story is unfolding fast, and we look forward to covering the next chapter. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and see you around.
If you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@spacewatch.global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Torsten and Col, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.